Well, hundreds of schoolgirls have reportedly been poisoned in Iran. The gas attacks began after mass unrest in Iran following the death of Mahsa Amini.
That's right. She died in custody, you may remember, after being detained by the country's morality police, as they're known, for improperly wearing her headscarf. Well, many women, including school-age girls, were involved in a series of anti-government protests ever since. For more, let's bring in global affairs journalist Tara Kangarlou. She's the author of The Heartbeat of Iran and is also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Thank you for speaking with us today. I know that you've been speaking with doctors and parents of these sick young girls. What did they tell you has happened to them?
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I've been in touch with parents as well as doctors who are following this story closely. I want to also add that, by the way, this has been going on since November, and it all started in the conservative and ultra-religious city of Qom, just south of Tehran. And now, of course, it has spread throughout the country, and cases have been seen in the capital, in Tehran. I've spoken to a mother whose daughter actually goes to a private school, and she was affected. She came home with nausea, shortness of breath, and so were her classmates as well as teachers sick as well. I've spoken to physicians actually both in northwest of the country, but also in Qom, who told me that, again, students are coming in with similar symptoms. What's interesting, actually, is that some of these doctors have told me that, we treat the students, they feel better, they go home. But some have been coming back to the hospital with symptoms of muscle pain and muscle ache that's making them believe that whatever this gas is has had some sort of a neurological impact. But again, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of investigation as far as the families goes, by the way, that's going into what they're seeing. But the bottom line is that this is once again another example of this lack of transparency by the Iranian government.
Wow.
Yeah, Tara, it's so disturbing to hear those details. And I wonder if anything more is known at this point about where this gas came from, whether it's perhaps related to these ongoing protests that we've been seeing.
That's a great question. And I think that's a question that's on the mind of not just parents or students or teachers, but millions of Iranians who have been witnessing perhaps some of the most unprecedented anti-government protests in Iran since the death of Mahsa Amini. Again, the lack of trust in the government is evident, and I don't think people are expecting to hear anything really from government official that they would take as truth. Over and over, Iranian people have faced situations where the government has not been truthful. In all the big stories that we've been covering, the government has not been truthful and credible and transparent. Now, and it's interesting, some of the officials are even saying that these high numbers of hospitalizations are due to stress of students, and we know that is not truthful at all. So really, people are not waiting to hear the truth from the government, but of course this is leaving an enormous amount of stress and anxiety for a population that has already been going through a lot since the events that we just talked about back in September.
And so, Tara, if that's what's happening domestically, on the international front, you talk about the lack of transparency by the government. Iran's nuclear program, according to the IAEA, is enriching uranium up to 83%, needs to get to 90% to make weapons-grade material. How relevant is that as far as how the country should or should not be trusted geopolitically?
Absolutely. And again, as you know, Rafael Grossi, IAEA chief, is in Iran, actually, and he's scheduled to potentially meet with the country's president. And also Bill Burns, CIA director, told your network, CBS, last week that Tehran would only need a matter of weeks to enrich uranium capable of powering a nuclear weapon. So the stakes are extremely high. But if you talk to Iranian people on the ground, they absolutely do not believe that the world should engage with the Iranian government unless they see systematic change domestically. So many people inside the country and outside are calling even for regime change. So, you had perhaps 2015 when I was covering the nuclear talks in Iran, where there was some level of excitement where people thought that, the sanction relief will bring them some level of prosperity and economic growth, but there's absolutely no trust in their government, and the Iranian people don't think that the world should negotiate and engage with the Islamic regime unless, again, there are systematic changes pertaining to human rights and the various sociopolitical issues that exist in Iran. Again, the brutal crackdowns that we've seen over the last few months were a testament of how the government perpetually disregards the rights of its citizens. So Iranian people are extremely concerned, but again, these numbers are concerning as well. So that's, I think, why the IAEA chief is in Iran trying to figure out, ways to move forward.
Well, we're continuing to see those very public signs of that domestic turmoil in Iran. Tara Kangarlou, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.